Welcome back. This is our third grouping of Anti-Sicilians, and we're going to be focusing on the Smith Morra Gambit, which originally, when I was analyzing the Sicilian, I didn't take the Smith Morra very seriously, but ever since the book by Esserman came out, it's become a serious attacking opening, especially in faster time controls. It can have a devastating effect. You'll see very strong players losing to experts. I've found games where like Grandmaster Zapata lost to an expert in the line. So it is something that should be taken very seriously. And keep in mind, we discussed it in the Alpen, that at this point, we can transpose into our Alpen analysis if you're not comfortable with playing the Smith Morra by simply playing knight f6. So be very aware of being able to transpose into that. And as I noted in the Alpen variation, you will see the Alpen more than anything else, especially if you avoid the Smith Morra. So for those brave at heart, let's go ahead and look at the nasty variations then. So we take on c3, get that second pawn, which speeds up white's development the entire point of the gambit. Now we get some basic development, and we have an idea here that we're going for. That this is a game by Delchev, and he authored a book on the Taimanov called The Safest Sicilian. I want to say it was in the late 2000s. And when I was going through the book, I was clearly looking for updates, so I started going through the author's game. So that brought me to analyzing Delchev's games himself. And when playing against much lower-rated players, he was playing a tricky variation that I'd never seen before. And generally, he ended up placing the bishop on d6. So the first line I questioned when analyzing was, what happens if white plays bishop f4 here to stop queen c7 and bishop d6, as we'll see in the main line? Well, we're gradually going to play against that bishop on f4. So first, let's go ahead and cover the b5 square. Bishop c4 is generally where that bishop's going to go. It's most aggressive. Knight ge7. We don't worry about bishop d6 because after we get a position like this, I am not too worried about any of the typical sacrifices, and you're going to get decent development pretty quickly here. And I think black's just a pawn up. So after castles, which is the main variation, knight g6, tickling the bishop. And when he runs, bishop e7. So the only major problem we're having here is, of course, development of our light-squared bishop on c8. So let's go ahead and fix that. If they played a4, we play b6. If they play rook fd1, of course we play b5. And let's go ahead and try to get rid of this nasty bishop. And after bishop e7, e5, it gets to the critical point of the game. Knight c4, and I feel like white's kind of bailing out here because he is already trying to trade some pieces down. And again, not too worried about this. We're getting good play, giving back the pawn, and long term I think white's pawns are going to be weaker than black's. There's only a few more moves left in this game, so I'll go ahead and show the rest. And black is getting really excellent play with the in-between move, bishop c5. And just look how everybody just came alive all of a sudden. White's dark square bishop is dominated on h2, where black's is just entering the game and is an extremely powerful piece. He takes the pawn, and at this point, this is where my analysis ended in the file, where, I don't think black has too much to be complaining about. So going back, the main variation you'll see, and I'll say in 9 out of 10 games, I've only seen bishop f4 once in my practice. you'll face bishop c4, which is, just hands down the main line. So first you play a6, and generally, as soon as a6 is played, they'll play a4 prophylaxis against the b5 idea, so they won't lose time. But if they don't, and they go with queen e2, queen c7, and then our idea, bishop d6. And I really like this idea because generally Alpen players, it's like an automaton plan. It's like rook d1, e5, bishop f4, knight e4, knight d6, or some variation of rook d1, knight d5, and the other rooks on c1 just sacrificing a piece in the center. Like, it's not a whole lot of tricks in their bag. So, but that being the case, it can be played very quickly, and it's frustrating to play against in blitz games if you really don't know what you're doing. So generally, rook d1 is played, and then knight g to e7, and e5, they can't really play it. And I think knight d5 is prevented, and e5 is prevented, so it makes white think. And generally, the guideline that I use with playing Anti-Sicilians, which most of the time when you face Anti-Sicilians, it's going to be against class players or lower rated players. And they're only going to want to get the typical play, which is seen in the main line, or whatever typical tricks can stem, so they can just make an easy game. So anytime you can prevent those tricks and make them think, normally you already have an advantage because they're going to waste time or do something stupid almost immediately. So the only two moves that should be considered here are bishop e3 and rook d6. So we'll look at rook d6. This is played against me in one of my online games. If you take and after e5, you shouldn't have much of a problem here, because already I feel like black is better after simply queen c7, and long term you're going to play knight g6, focus on the e-pawn, and just get simple development. The other variation is, of course, bishop e3. Now we go to e5. That gets some trades, and he still can't play f4 or e5, but he wants to. So he plays g3, and to stop time wasting and to prevent the idea of a knight after e5 ever going to e4 and then d6 causing us trouble, we just snack the knight immediately, get some time, and then, black should be fine here. Like, the bishop pair is good, but I don't know if you can seriously consider it as having full compensation for the line. So going back after a6, if they play a4, the main line, queen c7, bishop e2, bishop d6 again, our key move, knight g e7, and knight g6, holding down the e5 square. Now, I really like this move by Delchev here because in the title game, Delchev is a 2,600 FIDE rated Grandmaster, and he's playing against an expert rated, or a candidate master rated 2,000. So he is putting some pressure on white immediately with this h5 move, and it's not clear exactly how white's going to make serious progress. So he plays, a solid move, rook c1, h4. And he's just tightening the screws here. I still don't see what white's plan is, but black's just gradually improving his position. So after bishop a2, takes, and then queen a5, with the idea of potentially swinging that queen over with devastating effect. So it brings the rook over. Don't want to worry about the bishop. And after knight d5, this is one of those typical moves that I was speaking for earlier, that as soon as they get both the rooks on d1 and c1, you see knight d5 almost immediately, and you have to be very aware of this move. We can take in this variation, and now don't get greedy. How people get in trouble with black in this variation is trying to hold on to it like you just sacrifice a piece for no reason. No. Just castle, get back the piece, get easy development, and don't worry about a thing. Because you're still a pawn up. So the more we can liquidate here, the easier our job's going to be. And in this position already, this is just a devastating pin. I don't see how White's going to be living this situation. So let's go ahead and tighten the screws a little bit more. He's just getting everything working. Trying to get that last rook into the game. So nice. Got such great piece harmony. Now on bishop h3. Alright. So in this position there's a tactic available, and to close out the video, go ahead and pause it or see if you can find it. Alright, the answer is queen takes f3, and this forced resignation because only bad things can happen.